All right, we are live. What's up, everybody? 102, going a little early. Got a big day ahead of us. Black Friday, Cyber Monday is beginning soon. This is not live. Let's go live. So, what are we going to talk about? Do we need to focus on certain things to build strength for speed? I think this is a good topic that I like going over, because some people will say you don't need certain aspects for speed. And we in the past have even covered specific papers that look at just simple things like hang cleans and back squats that people can do for 6 weeks, and they'll have an improvement in their shuttle, they'll have an improvement in their 10 and their 20 meter sprint. So we know that there's certain things that we can actually do to build up overall speed. And so what I'm going to be doing today is we're going to have a little bit of discussion on why stronger muscles make athletes faster. Sorry, I just got lifted. I ran my marathon this weekend. How do my arms look? I ran my marathon this weekend. Let me share my sweet medal. So we ran the marathon this weekend, and I'm just starting to lift today, get back in a little bit of lifting base shape, and then I'm going to figure out. I already signed up for a couple other events. I signed up for an 8K and a half marathon already because I had so much fun. But anyway, getting back to it. Why stronger muscles make athletes faster? What types of exercises get athletes faster? And then how someone can program exercises for speed development. So GFYM. This is from B. Fwitch, which I'm assuming GFYM means something bad, but I have no idea what it means. Anyway, when we're looking at stronger muscles that make athletes faster, I think the first thing we got to look at is, can you show those dope lifters? Yeah. First, check out this Machamp autographed by Saito. Here's our lifters. These are like the old school specialized garage strength lifters. How does it feel to have Jason Brown, the king of programming, complement your program? It feels good. Jason and I actually talked a little bit. Yeah, it feels good. I think that's like an interesting discussion there. Is it's like why do certain people like our program? And I think that a lot of what we're doing, especially Chad's talking about, Jason Brown gave us some feedback that he liked our Peak Strength app, and it's like I think a lot of stuff that comes back to is we do a good job building the program around athletes, obviously, because that's where our success is. We do a good job of building the program around how to help people with overall fitness, how to help people with explosiveness, how to help people gain size and strength. And so when you're looking at like stronger muscles, specifically in this case to make athletes faster, we first have to break down, and this is exactly what we do inside of Peak Strength. So when we're laying out, our champions method, right? We're starting to figure out, okay, what's the vision? That's part of the method. What is the factor? What's the point, like the weak point? So that means we have to test people. So we have to test, we have to figure out the vision. Then when we test somebody, we can look at these benchmarks. Then we can program solve based off those benchmarks. And so if you're looking at speed, we like to test things like vertical jump. We like to test things like the 5-10-5, single leg squats. Okay, so why are we doing that? So we're testing those aspects because we're trying to look and see how strong are their quads, how strong are their glutes, how strong are their hamstrings, how explosive are their hamstrings, how explosive are their glutes, how explosive are their quads. Why does that matter? Well, when we're looking at speed, we know acceleration is based around glutes, hammies, quads. Okay, acceleration, 0 to 20. So if we know that we can make those muscles more explosive, twitchier, stronger even, we then know that now that individual can apply more force. And so if we think about building up these groups, okay, especially like glutes, hammies, quads, building them up with specific movements, and then trying to get as close as we can along this line, this spectrum of performance, we periodize, like the first 2 programs, the first 8 weeks is developing the coordination, the speed, the rate of coordination, the muscular size. Okay. And then the next 2 to 3 programs, so another like 12 weeks. Well, now we're going to try and focus on neural innervation. Now we're going to try and focus on how well they coordinate. Now that we're going to focus on, can we get this bigger muscle to innervate more effectively so that it applies way more force? We know that a little bit more size. We know that bigger size is related to more power output. There's some really recent powerlifting research around this. So we also know that, if you look at, men are more explosive than women because they have more muscle mass. So if we can increase muscle mass to a point, to a very fine line, to a very fine point, and then make it more coordinated by doing, plyometric work like we do on Athlete Day, or doing impulse work, which is like speed strength. We think about, everybody has the term speed strength, and at the same time, it's like impulse is really speed strength, and impulse is force over a designated time frame. And so if we're looking at sprinting or running as fast as possible, that time frame is going to be measured by time, but it's also going to be measured by distance. So if we're running a 20 or a 30, or if we're on a football field, that timeline needs to be much shorter if we're going to cover 10 or 15 yards playing football or playing soccer. So we need to be able to have bigger muscles that coordinate very, very quickly. So you have to go back and forth on this seesaw of developing strength, developing twitchiness, develop strength, develop impulse or speed strength, develop more explosiveness and neural innervation and better recruitment, make it more coordinated. And I like to think about it as if you're throwing, let's say you're practicing long toss, right? When you first start throwing a baseball, okay, or a football, when you first start throwing a football, you can only throw it 10 yards. But the stronger your arm gets, you can throw a little bit further. But then we need to start doing more technical work. Okay, we need to think about the slot of release. We need to think about how we're using our trunk. We need to focus in on all those little technical aspects. That helps us be a little bit more coordinated so that we can apply more force in a more precise manner to help us throw that football 10 yards or 15 yards more on a dime. Okay, that's how you get more coordinated to throw something. It's the same thing if we're sprinting. So if we build strength throughout those key muscle groups, and then we're doing the work out on the track, or we're doing the work out on the field, and we're doing specific work during Athlete Day, like sprinting with sleds, or doing single leg bounds, or doing hurdle hops, improving things like that. Well, now all of a sudden, those muscles that we gain strength in single leg squats or back squats can now recruit, and they get trained at those really, really high speeds. So that's why stronger muscles can help athletes be faster. It's because they're helping them overall with coordination. This episode is not brought to you by Zevia. It's brought to you by my marathon medal. I always thought medals were like sort of corny. Then I got this marathon medal, and I was like super proud of myself. I'm like, dude, I've only ever really been proud of myself with like a physical feat, like maybe 2 times. Yeah. What type of exercises get athletes faster? Okay, so that's another big question. So we've got to look at what type of athletes what type of exercises get athletes faster. One, break that down again, okay? If we're looking at general movement patterns, we have to recognize hamstrings, calves, specifically the soleus. I hope you guys have looked at or watched the videos where we talk about the soleus and the gastroc. And if you look at the soleus, that's going to be really, really responsible for really, really precise high-speed movements, high-speed jumps. If you look at the gastroc, dudes with huge gastrocs, right? Men, women with huge gastrocs are typically going to be much more powerful, like bigger, more explosive in the sense that they are a larger individual, and they're going to be the people who are like D tackles, shot putters, anything along those lines. The soleus, if you have somebody who's more soleus dominated, they're typically going to be the wide receivers. They're going to be the running backs, the sprinters, okay? So you can almost look at that and say, okay, if we got soleus work, gastroc work, hamstring work, quad work, any type of hip-specific exercises, glutes, obviously, big time with the glutes. So then you start to look at each specific grouping of muscles and you say, okay, what are glute exercises that are general? What are glute exercises that are, not sport specific, but on that spectrum of getting closer to the sport specificity? So I like to break it up and say, okay, we've got general exercises here. We've got sport-specific exercises here that are going to help us that are glute-based. And then we've got basically the bridge. Okay, so the bridge exercises might be something like a power snatch or a hang power clean, something like that, where it's explosive and it's fast. So the speed is going to resemble the sport-specific speed, but the movement might still be a general movement. So that's the big aspect, is that if we look at a general movement, we're just trying to target that muscle group, okay, and strengthen it from a general concept. Then we have to look at sport specificity through angles and through movement patterns and through rate of coordination. So if we're saying that we want to be sprinting, right, we need to do something that would be below sprinting, would be sprinting with a sled. Sprinting up hills with a, let's say with a weighted vest or something, although I would not do that, but let's just say now that's closer to the sport-specific movement pattern, okay, because the speed is closer and the actual action of the movement is also very close. So there's this spectrum that we can break down into 3 different exercises before you would get to the actual sport-specific movement that is just sprinting, and that's how you sort of lump those exercises together. So for glutes, let's say you do single leg squats as a general prep, okay? The bridge movement would be let's say for the bridge movement, we're doing a low hang snatch, a low hang power snatch. Okay. And then for the sport specific movement, we're doing sled marches, sled towing. Okay. So sled towing with like 110 pounds, almost just like, if you watch Brother Ferris and I do that video, that's when we're just driving with the sled behind us a little bit slower. That would be more sport specific for the glutes. If we're looking at hamstrings, a general prep hamstring exercises could be Nordics, okay? If we're looking at this through speed, so the general prep would be Nordics, okay? The bridge exercise might be a high butt power snatch or something like that, or even an unbroken single leg squat I would actually put in there. And then that sport-specific exercise could be stiff-legged sled towing, literally stiff-legged sled towing, or Dion's. Dion's are a plyometric exercise where you almost have like a stiff-legged position and you're just focusing on hip extension from the hamstrings. So those are some other key, some other interesting aspects. If we're looking at quads, okay, so a sport-specific or a general prep quad exercise would be a front squat, okay? Front squat would be, a really good example there. If we're looking at the bridge exercise, let's say that bridge exercise, we're doing like a split stance trap bar deadlift rapidly, really explosively, okay? Then the sport-specific movement would be a sled push, okay? So as far as that's concerned, that's how we like to break these things down, so it makes it a little bit easier to figure that out. Andrew, I'm going to get to some of you. You got some really good questions in here. A lot of really good questions in here. Husam, wrestling is a natural talent. You either have it or you don't. That is not accurate. You are not accurate there. Let's see. Beef Witch. Beef Witch is in there. Is he trolling again? I'm trying to look through some of these questions. Let's see you lift weights, bozo. Are you talking to me, Beef Witch? Gosh, why are you always attacking people? Okay, so let's get back. Gym workout, please. No. Okay, so finally, how can someone program exercises for speed development? I think the big factor is when you're programming exercises for speed development, what you're going to end up doing is if you're programming for speed development, I first like to look at how far out from a peak point am I. That's why inside peak strength, we set it up, establish that peak point. Then we can work backwards. We'll test you. We look and see, okay, when we're testing these things, what are the limiting factors? Okay, now if we spend too much time in the weight room, they might get slower. If we don't spend enough time in the weight room, they're going to be too weak. So we have to play this little seesaw back and forth between sprint work and actual lifting work. early on, I'm going to spend 8 weeks really, really developing strength work and really developing that general preparation movement patterns. Then the next 2 programs, we're going to focus more on bridge stuff, and we're going to bring in more sports-specific work around sprinting. So we're going to start sprinting up hills. We're going to start sprinting, bounding, hurdle hops, things along those lines. It's going to transfer really well. Then the next 2 to 3 programs, that's when we're going to start to get really, really specific and really lead into a lot of speed development. And so that's sort of like the crash course on how to develop a speed-based program. There's certain factors that we got to bring in with sled towing. There's certain factors that we got to bring in with body weight work. There's certain factors that we got to bring in with technique. All of those things play a pretty big role. We're also going to start to play around with some reflexive movements and some of this stuff too when we're dealing with high school kids, right? Middle school kids. Just doing weightlifting movements and back squats is going to make people faster. Like that's not me making this up. We covered this in last week's live, or 2 weeks ago maybe it was, where we went over some of the research around this factor that 6 weeks of doing hang clean and weightlifting derivatives still led to an improvement in the 5-10-5 and in the 20-yard sprint. 6 weeks, that's it. That's all it took. So if we're going through this and we're mastering the details of sprint work and we're trying to apply, mastering those details, and we're doing things like we're executing that 4-for-4 concept where we're showing up to the gym 4 days a week for 4 weeks, well, guess what? We're going to get faster. We're going to get more explosive. Okay, but you got to build out that speed development program based around where athletes are strength-wise, based around where athletes are speed-wise, and where you see some of those massive limiting factors. And so let me get into those Black Friday deals. I want to get into those Black Friday deals, and then we're going to start answering a whole bunch of different questions, and we're even going to be reacting to a couple sprint-based videos today. We got a sweet one with Noah Lyles, actually 2 with Noah Lyles and Kellyanne Baptiste. We've got a Nick Singleton workout with myself. And then even before that, if you guys want to learn more and you want to be more involved with what we're doing, all you guys have to do, if you're interested in this, is if you're interested in a deeper dive discussion on all aspects of training, that's going to help you with coaching specific tips to your specific goals, please consider becoming a channel member. Once you become a channel member, we meet every single Friday where I give you direct tips on improving your training. And it's a really positive group where everybody sort of chills out, asks questions. I try to break down some research papers to help apply to your guys' specific training situations. It's $10 a month. You get a full hour lecture. Cheaper than the price of a cup of coffee. All you have to do is click the join button if you're on a desktop, or click the link in the description to become a channel member today. But if you don't want to spend $10, you can also check out our Garage Strength podcast on any podcast app, including YouTube. Now, Black Friday deals. I think this is the first time. Steve, thanks for saying it's a great group. I hope you're doing well. I'm going up to watch the All-Star match today up at Penn State. South Dakota State's got a couple guys up there. Where do unbroken squats fit in? Andrew, that's a great question, because I would start to use unbroken squats in the second and third phase of a speed development program. All right, Black Friday deals. Let's get it. Thursday, Friday. We got a really big one that starts today, actually. Really big one that starts today. So check this last one out. The first one, Thursday, Friday, if you spend over $100, you're going to get a free shirt. The first 50 orders over $200 are going to get that free Iron Claw bundle. So you get the garage grips, you get thumb tape, you get chalk, and you get a grip training program if you spend over $200 and you're part of those first 50 orders. Saturday, Sunday, 25% off site-wide, and it's the last day that you can pick up our fall apparel. And then we got Cyber Monday and Tuesday. This is going to be huge with up to 75% off all digital products on our website. This includes PDF programs. All of them are going to be 75% off. We're slowly getting rid of all those PDF programs. Now, the whole weekend, and this starts today, is 40% off Peak Strength. Now, hear this out. You have to use the code new2peak40, and you can only use it at peakstrength.app. So new2peak40. 40% off. Starting today, starting today, new users that activate the trial. If you start today and you activate your trial with that code, new2peak40, you'll get a chance to win a free year of peak strength. Okay. 3 members are going to be selected between today and next Tuesday. And the first one is going to be announced next Tuesday. Okay. So between today and next Tuesday, 3 people who use the new 2 Peak 40 to activate their trial will be entered. Everybody's going to be entered into this to win a full year of peak strength. So it takes 1 entry. When you enter new 2 Peak 40, you're going to get 40% off. You enter into that trial. Okay. When you activate for the trial, now you're in that giant pool of people who we're going to select from who could win a full year of peak strength. It's going to be crazy. So let's react to some of these videos and try to pull these up. Here we go. Let's go back over here. If I go like this, and then I look at really struggling here. There we go. All right, let's check this out. So this here is Noah Lyles, one of the greatest of all time, arguably. Just absolutely cranking here. I think this is 110 kilos, if I remember. Yes, 110 kilos. Now, a lot of people will say this too, like, boom, just toying that around. And I think that if you watch some of the stuff he was working on, a lot of it was specifically his start in the first 5 to 10 strides. So that plays a pretty big example. Look at how explosive, how easy. I mean, he's catching this as tall as possible, right? Real tall. Let's see. That's great right there. Now, this is Kellyanne Baptiste. This is what, 80 kilos, if I remember. Yeah, 80 kilos. Boom. I think she's actually using a men's bar. Yeah, she's definitely using a men's bar. Oh, so here we go, too, is that we're looking at...
So I'm Ralph Mann. I'm a biomechanist. I've been working with several teams in the world, the USA, China as the primary source. I've been doing this for about 40 years and collecting data on elite performances in sprints.
So this would be Ralph Mann's book right here. Okay. And I would say out of the books on sprinting, probably where I would roll right there.
Between a great athlete and a good athlete is about 1%, so you can't miss anything here.
All right, Ralph, let's roll.
It's built to his body size. It's 1/10 of a second.
Okay, so now he's got Noah coming in here. If we check this out, now remember we were just watching that video Noah Lyles when he's about to peak. That 110 kilo clean. He also did have a video. Look at that. Just listen to that too. If sprinting is a contact sport.
That's scary. This time of year, it's scary. That's a lot of power.
Today, we're really going to be hammering this glute, striking back into the track, pushing back into the blocks. Coach is going to come up and he's going to say it like 5 times a day. So I was going to talk about like arms pulling back into the face, pulling back, not letting go too far back.
Right arm doesn't fly. Hits out, recovers back. Okay? Hip goes through to the track.
That's one. That's one.
All right, we good, Ralph?
Let's watch one more of these starts because these are explosive. Here we go. Also, this dude power clean like 135, 137 kilos, and he's probably, 160 pounds. Try to just pay attention to the sound, how much force he's putting into the ground, how explosive he is, how twitchy he is. And this is a big thing with guys like Lyles. Here we go. Here, just listen. Boom, 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 boom. I think that's the one thing that we forget is like applying that much force. It takes a lot of energy, right? It takes a lot of strength. takes a freaking ton of strength to actually do that and to just get things rolling. Boom.
An initial push to back leg. When you really hit it, you see the knee do this on the model. Right now, you're just doing that.
Yeah, I got you.
It's almost, you're pulling it out of there instead of
Pushing it, striking it, and it moving forward because I'm striking
you're
it
kind
back.
of rolling off of it instead of striking it.
Yeah.
All right.
Here's another one. And so the crazy part too is that when they're doing these sessions, when they're doing these training sessions, they're basically going to be going in and doing maybe 5 to 10 starts, and then they're cooked. And then they've got to relax, they've got to recover, and then they've got to get back. They might do a resistance-based workout in the afternoon to try and get it done. So I think that there's a lot of different factors that go into sprinting. And some people are like, oh, you don't need to lift. Oh, really? You don't need to lift? You think Shelly Ann Fraser-Price doesn't lift weights? You think Noah Lyles isn't lifting weights? Stop talking. Boom. Okay, so this is Nicholas. This is last Christmas, I want to say, after his season last year as a freshman. So he's just warming up here, and then let's go into this a little bit further because he's starting to.
There's also a little bit more speed involved. They have to move it a little bit quicker, which you'll see. What kind of speed he can put out.
Okay. So that's 110. Now that's the same weight that Lyles was moving. And the thing is like as you get stronger, you've got to focus on moving these weights. Snappy, 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 snappy. Boom. Okay, good. Oh, there's DJ. Now we got 130 kilos here with Nicholas.
Yeah, that was 170.
So moving at 1.7 meters per second. There's Nick when he's back in high school. That's during COVID. Look at that.
Like 95 degrees. No
Two of those guys right there on the screen are playing Power 5 football, and we train them through Zoom. So when people are asking about peak strength,
It gives you
the system is built around the time and energy that we put developing a lot of these guys during COVID when they were at home.
probably. I bet you if Nick really wanted to, he would hit 330 for like a set of 3 or 4.
What's crazy too is like, okay, here's 310, boom, good. And I want to say Nick moved.
That was faster than your 130.
I think he power snatched.
Faster than 130.
If I remember correctly, Nick power snatched 100 kilos, and I want to say it was at like 1.8 meters per second. So that's basically where we're going to start seeing that impulse work. So it's the same crazy stuff. Let's watch one more video here, Nick.
To 300.
I think he,
Single leg squat hip is where he has that issue. So it's like if
yeah, some of this stuff's really good.
a hamstring, he has that strength to get out of that position.
Dane, stop talking. Nobody cares about you. There we go. You can see Nick in the background where we're trying to work on his trunk control right there. So a lot of stuff is if we can do some contrast method,
Oh, Nick's doing a little better job over there.
be stable with the trunk while he's doing single leg work, nice and slow, eccentric, come up really fast. Boom. Okay, and then that's going to help improve that trunk control. So I wanted to share some of that stuff with you guys so you could see some of the work that we were doing with Nick and how this plays a pretty big role. We were doing some crazy flywheel work as well. Okay, so there we go. I'm going to try and shut this off now.
Go right away.
So I think too, when we were doing, with the flywheel stuff, looking at how we were developing, outside of the flywheel, also, what are we doing with the single leg work? What are we doing with the cleans? What are we doing on his athlete day? And that's a lot of the stuff that I think is important. So when we're laying out the training program, we like to look at everything through those specific exercise identification models, and then we try to look at based off of where the peak point is, and then we start to look at the priority based off of, is this person really strong and they need to get faster, or is this person really weak and they need to get stronger, or are they somewhere in the middle? Where do they fall on the spectrum, and then how can we develop that over time? So some of the other big factors too is that some of the other big factors here, and I'm going to try to answer some of your questions now, is, Coach, can you train speed off sound, like gunshot or track and field, ear to leg reaction speed? We talk about this quite a bit where we're trying to focus on command-based work, right? So we might do a back squat that is based off an auditory command. So you pause, 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 drive up fast. Okay. Some things that we could do is you get a football and you go based off of actually snapping the ball. Okay. So these are some ways that you can use auditory commands, okay, or auditory or visual cues to train speed strength, which we refer to as impulse work. Okay. So if we're looking at impulse work and we're in a sport that is auditory based or it is visually based, we've got to be able to apply those things so that it's just automatic. We have to think automatic with these things. That's the benefit of the reflexive work that we do. That's the benefit of the work that we do on impulse and on athlete day. And if we can develop these things, apply a ton of force as quickly as possible. Okay. If we can figure that out, right, over a long period of time, then in turn, when you get out on a football field or you're out on a soccer pitch or you're, whatever you're doing, you're playing lacrosse, you're playing basketball, you're applying force at high speeds and you don't have to think about it. You're not like, okay, now I have to do X. Instead, you do it. And I think that's some of the key things that we've got to focus on when we're training. I think that's stuff that we're going to be seeing develop quite a bit long term. So you asked about that training for sound quite a bit. Okay, so we've got, here we go. Does the same principles for running speed apply to stuff like punch and kicking speed? And what exercises should be used for that kind of speed? So, Keith, that's a great question because, interestingly enough, recently there was a study on Muay Thai kickers, okay, or Muay Thai striking capability. And so they measured the power output from these Muay Thai athletes, individuals, and what their kicking power was. And then they increased their back squat strength, okay, in a chronic setting. So over like 6 to 8 weeks, they increased their back squat. But then they also had them do a back squat session. So they would do back squats where they would increase their neural drive. So they would do they would do back squats at like 70 to 80%. And then they would rest for about 3 minutes. And then they would go test their striking ability after they did their squats. And when they did their striking after they did their back squats, they had a higher striking force output. Okay, so a lot of people will say, well, so what are you going to train, Muay Thai athletes to be these big bodybuilders? No, we're just trying to get them a little bit more strong, a little bit stronger pound for pound. We're trying to increase their relative strength. And if we can increase their relative strength, we're going to see that at higher speeds, they're going to apply more force. And a lot of coaches get stuck in this mindset of like super sports specific training has to be the way we go. But then there's a lot of data that'll show us that it's not always that way. We have the data on the 6 weeks of a hang clean, the 6 weeks of a back squat will improve your 5-10-5 or your 20 meter sprint. Now we're seeing that just improving a back squat leads to better power output from somebody who's in Muay Thai. So it's important to think outside of this lens and recognize the whole goal is that we are training them to be fighters if we're training a combat athlete, but also realize that some of the simplest things that we can do are figure out how to increase their pound for pound strength and at the same time improve their overall technical ability. Because that's the overarching theme here is that if we're training a fighter or in this case, Keith, you asked about the fighter, or if we're training a sprinter, we need to develop their strength and their power output, their impulse expression without taking away from their technical sport. If we take away from their technical sport, well, then that's going to have a negative impact on their overall performance. And that's just stuff that we've got to keep in the back of our mind. I think too often coaches have forgotten those aspects. Can we do push-ups every day? Absolutely, we can do push-ups every day. How can I improve stride length when sprinting? So one of the things that I think to improve stride length when sprinting, I think the first thing you could do is like single leg bounds. Okay. I also think a little bit more of the front side mechanics. And the funny thing is you'll still see guys saying there's no such thing as front side mechanics. And they'll use, very random videos of people and say, look, this person they have bad front side mechanics, but that's one thing you can do is drive that knee a little bit higher to lengthen your stride. You lengthen your stride. Now, if you can handle that force output, your hamstrings are strong enough and you can get through hip extension. Okay. Well, now all of a sudden you can lengthen that stride and you can still, you're going to run faster. Coach, I feel like my injury is healing well. I'm starting to squat heavier, but still afraid to get on the field and ruin the progress. What would be your advice? So Eli, I would try to figure out can you establish some type of test? Okay, so, so how often do you train for speed? We got once a week at 42%, twice a week at 42%. I feel like we should do a final vote. What's better, once a week or twice a week? Once a week or twice a week? We could get a little bit better feedback there. We got that's a crazy poll. So, Eli, what you should do is establish the test for your injury. What can you do to prove to yourself that you're recovering well from the injury? And then once you pass that test, now you can start to execute that a little bit more and go out on the field. Nick Hatfield, hey, how many weeks in a row do you use a step scheme? Can I change it every week, or should I use the same one for multiple weeks? Appreciate it. I like to use it for at least 2 weeks. 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off would be great. What would you recommend to become less stiff for football? We've actually got a cool video on best exercises for defensive linemen that talks about that. One thing that I love is box squats, pausing in the hole. I like single leg squats, a lot of Cossack squats. That's going to help with that change of level, change of hips. Dealing with crazy hamstring cramps for the past month. Are you hydrated? Are you getting enough potassium? Are you getting enough calcium? Are you able to, is it certain positions that causes this? Sometimes when people have hip extension with knee flexion, that typically can lead to some specific hamstring cramps in the semimembranosus. So that's another aspect too to keep in mind. And if that's the case, then we got to look at the mineral content. And honestly, sometimes just getting some blood work done can help quite a bit. Even iron supplementation actually can prevent that as well. How often do you change the main lift on impulse days, and what is your method of progression on dynamic effort lifts? So I'm assuming Big Z's talking about deadlifts or back squats, because we don't have a progression off deadlifts really. But how often do we change the main lift on impulse days? Every 4 to 5 weeks, about every 4 weeks. Method of progression of dynamic effort would be something along the lines of, I'm just trying to think, and for us, it might be unbroken back squats is going to go on impulse day. Okay, so we might do a pause. We might do like a pause back squat with an auditory command for one program. Then the next program, we do unbroken back squats. Then the last program, we do timed back squats. Okay, so it's like building up the speed and the power output, that speed strength component that we're going to be, factoring in on impulse day. So let me know if that helps. What can Nordic and regular hamstring curls do to translate to wrestling? So Isaiah is saying, I'm gotcha racing. We'll never see gotcha again. Okay. So Isaiah, thanks for coming in on the new screen there. As far as Nordics and hamstrings, think about when you're sprawling. Okay. So when you're sprawling, your hip is extending very hard. Okay, so if you have a strong hamstring, you can extend that hip, and strong glutes, you can extend that hip very well as you're sprawling, and then that gives you time to move their head position around based upon where you need their head to be upon how you're defending that. So that's how I would say. If that helps, let me know. My left soleus has been injured for so long. Any tips to recover faster from the injury? This is from Uncle Fester. So Uncle Fester, I would do very, very low impact jumping rope, very low impact like barefoot work. I would live on a PVC pipe. I would do a lot of towel curls with your feet and do things along that line to try and improve the soleus strength. That should help. Yeah, so Keist, I think this guy looks pretty fit. I bet he could run a marathon. Yeah, Russell, you see this. I know you see that. I know you see that marathon medal. Yeah, what's up? Ran that marathon this Sunday. Dude, my ankles are so sore. Talk about sore soleus and calves. Holy crap. So, Keist, you're bringing up a really good point here. And maybe what we can do, I think the science around cramps is it's not entirely like definitive. I think there's sodium depletion, which calcium and potassium are going to play a role, right? I think it can be related to a neural issue, because that's like another aspect around when you start to see neural issues When you have knee flexion with hip extension, that's another big factor. Okay. So I think that you sort of gotta, there's a lot of different things that can be related. I'm trying to bring up, here we go. If we go here and then that, okay, there we go. Now, okay, so let's go. Let's look at this. So this is a question from Keist. Muscle cramps and contractures. Okay, causes and treatment. So this is from February of 23. Research was probably done in 15 December of 22, right there. Okay, so this is February of 23. This came out. Okay, so some muscle cramps are painful, sudden involuntary muscle contractions that are generally self-limiting. Okay, they're often part of the spectrum of normal human physiology and can be associated with a wide range of acquired and inherited causes. So basically, and this is, inherited causes is an interesting one. This is totally anecdotal, and I've had conversations about this with John Giacalone, the mobility doc, and he's even said, I've said to him, like, I feel like I've seen, being around Alex, he's a monstrous Samoan dude, huge Samoan guy. And I'm like, dude, he cramps all the time. And he's like, dude, it could be because he's so muscular and he has some limiting factors as far as like muscle length. It could be he's just potentially more prone to it and needs to take care of it a little bit more frequently, needs to do more mobility work. They're only infrequently due to progressive systemic or neuromuscular diseases. So now they're mentioning cramps could also be related to, let's say, something like Parkinson's or something along those lines, right? Contractures can mimic cramps and are defined as shortenings of the muscle resulting in the inability to relax normally. So that's sort of where muscles slack. That's why we like using reflexive movements because that stuff can help quite a bit. So the main questions here, is this a muscle cramp or a contracture? Are the cramps exercise induced or are they symptomatic? Okay, so does a specific movement pattern cause that? What is or are the presumed causes of the muscle cramps, and what should be the diagnostic approach? How do we advise these? We consider these questions and a practical approach. Of course, they don't really go into much detail there, but I think that, let's see if there's another one, leg cramps. I mean, even there, what you're seeing is it's very, very open-ended. It's like no one's super dialed in with what's going to cause these muscle cramps, and I'm going to try and see if we can read the full text here. Yeah, we got to buy that. So as far as what's causing that, and that's British Medical Journal, right? As far as what is actually causing that, I think if I go back here, I think I got everything back up. Okay. I think it's not as easy as like, you got to have enough fluids, right? You've got to have enough sodium. Although all these things are going to be factors. Here's a good example. This past weekend when I was running the marathon, I was grooving. I'm like, I'm ready to crush this. I'm at mile 20 and a half. I'm at mile 21. I'm slaughtering the marathon. And then all of a sudden, around 21 and a half to 22 miles, I'm like, man, this is the furthest I've ever run. All of a sudden, boom, my quads start to cramp, both legs. I can just sense them coming on. I can feel it, right? I can start to feel it. Some people will recommend that's when you should be taking like a magnesium fluid. Okay, so you take a magnesium fluid and it can relax. Now, one of the things that I didn't have that on me, and if I take too many salts before a race or before I run, I get an upset stomach and I have to go to the bathroom. So I didn't do that before I ran the marathon. I have had cramps in my quads after big hill runs as well. So is it fluid based? Probably not. Is it sodium based for me? Probably. It's also probably symptomatic to my exercises. The exercise being a really long run. Okay. So I very rarely will get cramps from doing a Nordic hamstring or from doing a back squat or anything along those lines. Some other individuals get really bad hamstring cramps after they do their first Nordic, or they'll get really bad gastroc cramps from doing their first Nordics. That's going to be symptomatic to the exercise and potentially to some inherited issue. So I think we've just got to be aware as coaches that that's going to happen. Isaiah, so then should I maybe just do stuff that is more like that movement? So maybe an RDL or something of that nature, or should I stick to hammy curls? I would do RDLs and I would do hamstring curls. Which is better, reverse lunges or single leg squats? This is an interesting question. Which is better, reverse lunges or single leg squats? Reverse lunge or single leg squats? Okay, first of all, let's go through this pretty quickly. They're both great exercises. 2, single leg squats, you're going to have a bigger load. You have a barbell on your back and you got your single leg roller. It's going to help you be a slight bit more stable. 3, you got dumbbells if you're doing reverse lunges, and you've got to be in an open cage, probably walking for distance in some point. So if we're looking at this, single leg squats, in my opinion, is going to be a little bit more versatile because you have a bigger load. You're going to be a little bit more stable, and you can do different speeds on the action. So I would roll with those single leg squats if I was picking single legs over reverse lunges. How can I get more fluids? How can I get more fluid hips for agility and jukes? And this is where, so a lot of people will ask this question, being more fluid, right? So how can I be a little bit more fluid? How can I juke somebody a little bit more effectively? How can I have change of direction that's a little bit better? How can I run really fast, plant, and get out of the cut very effectively? This means, 1, we've got to have trunk control. Okay, we can't be collapsing all over the place. 2, we have to have stable hips. Single leg squats, reflexive movements, plate snatches, rotational exercises. We have to be stable in those positions. 3, we've got to be twitchy and elastic. If we're going to be explosive and we want to be fluid in cuts, okay, we have to be able to execute a jump cut with that trunk control and be strong enough to handle the jump cut and get out of it as quickly as possible. So we've got to be training absolute strength. We've got to be training athlete day. We've got to be training reflexive movements. And when we're looking at it, this is how the program has to be built with all those strength characteristics in mind. Now it comes back to when we test, okay, we've got a list of benchmarks for football, for soccer, for lacrosse. These are the benchmark lifts that help us build that program that we're trying to solve. Okay, so we're going to create this program solving to help delete your issues as an athlete and override those issues with those newfound benefits from absolute strength or from technical coordination or from mastering the details, whatever it might be. And so that's how we've got to base everything off of that. Bulgarian split squats are terrible. Bulgarian split squats are done on a bench press, not with a single leg roller. Does everybody get? We had some hate comments on me talking about that the other day, by the way. How do I transfer leg strength to explosive strength? Okay, so this is going to be, this is going to be similar to if we're getting stronger, right? Okay, so how do I take strength that I gain into explosive strength? So yes, some of this is going to be genetic. A lot of people will say, sorry, you can't make yourself more explosive. That's just what you're born with is what you get. You're wrong, okay? If we get someone here and we use a general exercise to get them stronger, we need to make sure that we're programming and we're periodizing these things accordingly. And we have exercise selection based off general prep, bridge exercise, sports specific movement. Okay. So if we need somebody to get stronger, let's take this example. You have a single leg squat. That's going to help them get stronger in that one leg. Okay. Now let's take something that's like a chaos single leg jump with weights, right? Now it's a little bit more explosive. You're doing it in a single leg position, but you're still doing it loaded. So it's that bridge exercise. Now that third exercise will be the sport specific movement. So this is when we can do something like single leg bounds, okay? Single leg stair jumps, hurdle hops. Now we took this general movement over here, we got into that bridge exercise, and we led into that sport specific movement, but we have to mold all of this together, and we've got to break this down with a whole bunch of different exercises and base that off of when you're going to be peaking. So that's how we lay out peak strength, is we try to solve these issues so that you can get stronger, you can get more explosive, and then you can get stronger again, and then you can get even more explosive again, and then that's how we build that over time. But again, that comes down to you got to master those details of how am I recovering? How much mobility am I going to be doing? Am I mindful of the scenario and what we're trying to accomplish? What's my nutrition and my sleep like? Okay, all of those things also do matter when we're talking about optimizing and your performance and your overall training. So news and analysis. He said the forbidden phrase, Bulgarian. Let's see. Coach, I have seen someone 3 months ago barely able to deadlift 365. 3 months later, they can do 495 for 3. Can deadlift strength go up that fast? So it depends on how long someone has been in the game. Remember, Rambler, like some people that, let's say somebody is deadlifting 365. Let's say they've lifted in their past. You can gain strength very, very quickly when you start to get back into strength training. Okay, so if I took off for 3 months, here's a good example. The last 3 weeks, I've done virtually no upper body training. Okay, virtually nothing. The last 3 months, I might have only lifted my upper body like 8 times, literally 8 times over the last 3 months. Now, I've been doing that because I've been training for the marathon, right? One thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to try to lift my upper body at least twice a week for the next like 3 to 4 months. Okay. If I can do that, I'm going to gain that strength back very quickly. And where I'm going with this is I dumbbell benched the hundreds today for 15 and it felt heavy. Did 15 reps, tried to get 17 and I died. Yesterday I benched 225 for 17 and I probably could have gotten maybe 25 reps, but it was heavy. It felt heavy. I'm willing to bet within 6 weeks of me training again with my upper body, I'll probably bench 315 for 10 to 17 reps, somewhere in that realm. So going back to the deadlift question, is this individual, were they trained prior? Did they lift beforehand, or did they just start to lift? Okay, so if they've trained in the past and their benches or their deadlift has gone up 100 plus pounds, that does make sense because they have that muscle memory is real, the coordination is real, the mirror neurons are real, all these things are real. So I do think that that's a big one. Keith's coming in with one of my favorite questions. Londa is saying, should I still do plyometrics on top of strength training and playing my sport? Yes, you should. Overrated, underrated, bench press purely for hypertrophy. This is funny, Keith, because a lot of people, when they're talking about the bench press, they'll say, well, the bench press is an overrated lift. You know, it's not that good at building shoulder hypertrophy. It's not that good at building pec hypertrophy. It's not that good at building tricep hypertrophy. Dude, you just listed 3 major muscle groups. And on top of that, if we're benching accordingly and we're packing in our lats here, right? Boom, boom, boom. We're focusing on our lat activation. We're building our shoulder strength. We're building our strength in our pecs and our triceps. You're doing this for hypertrophy work? 100% you should be doing it. And people are saying it's overrated. There's a reason why people love the bench. It's because it helps you get freaking big. It is not overrated. And people, in my mind, are there other upper body lifts that potentially might be better for your upper body? Maybe. But does that mean that that's an overrated lift? No, it's not an overrated lift. There's this stuff sort of blows me away that people are still discussing it, but I love answering the overrated and underrated. So if you guys have any other overrated, underrated, I'm all about it. So I love that question. What's better for lats? Hollow pull-ups, which is tough, or arch back pull-ups? I think based off of that, probably hollow pull-ups, except the only thing is arch back pull-ups, you would be able to add more load. So it depends. Are you going for strength or size? Andrew, stop asking questions that hold up your training. Jump into peak strength and ride that cultivation dragon and become a champion. That's right. I think that's, Andrew, Solidarity's point out something cool. And I had a couple people DM me. A lot of people were like, I posted that I did the marathon. I said I cultivated my power. I ran the marathon. It was something that's how I felt. I've been following the peak strength marathon training, doing the leg work, doing the easy leg work, the sled work, the single leg work, very, very light, right? And I think that bench's technical coordination is so hard to replace. That's right. I think that's the other factors that a lot of us get caught up in the bench question. We get caught up in, should I squat or should I run sprints? Instead of just going, right? Part of becoming a champion is executing the 4-for-4, where you're going and you're training 4 days a week, 4 hours for 4 days a week. Okay, you get an hour on Monday, an hour on Tuesday, an hour on Thursday, an hour on Friday. 4-for-4. Then you go and you do 4 weeks in a row. You train 4 days. There you got your first month down. Okay, so we want to argue about some things instead of just rolling with something that is provided that can help us achieve that elite level. And I think that that's here's a great one. Dane, overrated or underrated? Turkey stuffing. Underrated. I love turkey stuffing, especially with onions in it. And man, I miss my grandma. My grandma passed away. Both of them, my mom's mom, my dad's mom passed away the last 5 years now. Grandma made the best freaking turkey stuffing, dude. Love turkey stuffing. Love turkey stuffing with her onions. Love it. Yeah, I love it. Bench exercise. Bench is a good exercise, but I like push press better because push press is more fast twitch, and I like push press better. That's fine, Arturo, but we got asked the question around hypertrophy, so that's why I answered bench press for hypertrophy. Is it bad to always feel nauseous during heavy athlete leg workout? From Uncle Fester. I would just say revisit what are you eating on a regular basis before you train. Try to be aware of what you're eating, and that's going to help you determine that. Arturo's saying the marathon's too far for him. Anything over 400 is too far. Should I still do plyometrics? What's the best way to deal with injuries in your experience? I think as far as my experience with injuries, the first step is what can you still do? Okay, so what movement are you still capable of doing? Then the second thing is you bring in exercises and you say, does this exercise cause me issues? Is it causing me pain? And if it's causing you pain, you take it out, right? So you stop doing those movements that hurt. And then you slowly build up. And then you have these tests. And you have tests specific to injuries. So 2 tests for your knee, 2 tests for your ankle, 2 tests for your back. And if you can handle those tests, then you can get back into some type of semblance training, a relative training. Andrew just chimed in. Agree, it's underrated. Turkey stuffing with crab meat added in is my favorite. I've never had that, but now I want to have it. That sounds great. I love crab meat. That sounds freaking awesome. So I think when we're looking at testing, or when we're looking at injuries specifically, it almost is similar. Okay, so I rolled my ankle bad right before I was going to leave to go to Budapest. This is 12 weeks ago. My ankle still hurts. My ankle swelled up after the marathon. I can barely squat deep because of my ankle mobility is still sort of impinged. Impingement is still there. Now, I can still run, so I'm still running, but there's certain things if I squat super, super deep, I struggle with it. I can't get it done. So I think that's where you've just got to be aware of those things. In your opinion, what's the best leg exercises to strengthen knees with arthritis? Thanks, big guy. Honestly, people are going to freaking tell me I'm an idiot. One of the best ways that I think for knee arthritic knees is really, really, really light leg extensions, really light leg extensions, really light leg presses, really, really light. I like Spanish squats too as well. Spanish squats for sure. Somebody asked overrated or underrated from Edvard. Pushing and pulling the sled. Is it overrated or underrated? I love pushing and pulling the sled. I really, really like pushing it. I really like pulling it, especially sprint pulling. I'd still say it's underrated. I know there's a lot. You see it everywhere on social media right now. Everybody's jumping on that sled pull, train. I think what we're going to see is the sled pull train is going to continue to roll. But what's going to happen is I feel like this is how it rolls in the fitness world, right? You get the powerlifting phase, then you get into the CrossFit phase. The weightlifting phase will be a week. Then you get into the bodybuilding phase, and then you have some functional phase. And what's interesting is knees over toes right now, I think has created this functional phase, even though he's not a functional person. He is functional, but not really. But a lot of the sled stuff has been picked up by that functional community. Okay, so now you'll have the functional realm is where I would lump that. And then you're going to get back. I think you're going to start to see this again. It's going to go back to machine-based training. And the ridiculous part here is that machines are good. Sleds are good. Functional is good. Body weight is good. Powerlifting, really heavy back squats that aren't super wide stance or sumo position are also really good. Weightlifting movements, good. Okay, so plyometrics, good. Sprinting, good. All of these things are good. And I think that the interesting aspect is we can still do bodybuilding movements on a machine and still be really explosive. Like that's possible. And it's actually proving out that we're seeing like you might have a vastus lateralis issue. So you shouldn't do maybe leg extensions. You should do more leg presses. You have a rectus femoris issue. So maybe you should do more leg extensions. Okay. Or something like that. Right. So we're going to see that. I think you're going to start to see, we're going to tilt back into more machine-based training. Mainly because I've seen a couple papers recently about that. Best Thanksgiving recipes for athletes. I love cranberries. I love sweet potatoes. I love turkey. I love gravy. I love stuffing. I love pineapple filling. Has anyone had pineapple filling? Pineapple filling is incredible. Grandma used to make that as well. Hey man, it is kind of off topic, but I would really appreciate your answer. Do you think heavy squat, bench, deadlift, speed, power work like clean and jerk be programmed in one mesocycle? Yes. So heavy work on like a bench and a squat, speed work on a clean and a jerk for sure. Happy Thanksgiving to you, Andrew. Absolutely. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday of the year. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody out there. Best machine to sub for a squat. Hack squat or a leg press? Probably you should go with a hack squat. I like the leg press, but I would probably go with the hack squat just because it's hell. It's absolute hell. For my ankle injury, I did a lot of band work. I've been doing the PVC pipe stuff, but it's still a little struggle down in the deep position. Eli, overrated or underrated extensive plyometrics? Overrated or underrated extensive plyometrics? I would say underrated because a lot of people don't do them. I think a lot of people avoid plyo work. I think even adults we're going to see this. I know I've made this prediction in the past, but we're going to see reflexive exercises and plyometric movements are going to be used for therapy, for physical therapy in the elderly population. That is going to happen. I'm not saying machines are better for athletic training. No, I'm saying that you can be a good athlete and use machines. Can I use the kids as kettlebells? Yeah, I have a video, I think, of me using Sanderson one time that way. Yes, Keith, I believe it's mandatory. We'll see more of a shift in machine-based training as people sell more training machines direct to consumer. Yes, I think that's another big factor is like it's getting easier to make direct to consumer sales. Fabrication's a little bit harder, but we'll see how that rolls. I can squat 405 with a barbell. How come I struggle with, maybe your lower back, your posterior chain's probably stronger than your quads. What ankle mobility movements are effective for weightlifting? I think pausing in the hole. I think split squats. I think toe walking. I think heel walking, PVC pipe walks. Also fantastic for improving your ankle mobility. To be an elite lifter, triple jumpers or thrower, you need plyometrics. 100%. I'm in agreement with that. You guys go make sure that you guys vote on turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, or what's that last one? I can't read that one. Biscuits. I love biscuits. Also, don't forget today starts. If you go onto Peak Strength and you have never used Peak Strength, you can get 40% off for 1 month by using new 2 Peak 40. Today. You have to activate your trial. New 2 Peak 40 is the code. Once you activate your trial, you are entered to win 1 free year of training on Peak Strength. We're going to have 3 giveaways for that membership. 1 free year of Peak Strength training. Underrated or overrated French contrast training. Underrated or overrated? I'm going to say overrated. Do I think it's effective? Yes. But I feel like when we just put country names in front of things, I know that sounds ridiculous, but I think there's other better contrast methods. I do. I'm going to get attacked. I think there's better contrast methods than French contrast training. I think if we're looking at like people will be like, it's this like secret sauce. You got to do French contrast. Once you do French contrast, your whole world's going to change. I know somebody who wrote a book on this. They wrote a book on this style of training and don't use it anymore. It's wild. It's like, dude, you spent so much time being the preacher of this style of training, and a year and a half, 2 years later, you don't even use it anymore. Now, I think there's a time and there's a time to do it. Let's say you're a first generation freak. Will that code do anything? Andrew, that's bad customer service on my end because I don't know the answer to that question. I do not know the answer to that question. I used to train with Pan American silver medalist David Ragiste under former Mexico 110 hurdles record holder Rafa Echevarria. We did hella plyometrics every Wednesday. Absolutely. Andrew, I'm not sure. Obi-Wan Quixote, turkey versus prime rib for Thanksgiving. Both. I want gravy on both. A few other, dude, I like traditional contrast methods. I like the garage strength contrast method, which is Keith, hang on. So Keith with a great question there. So if we look at garage strength contrast, okay, we'll do an impulse movement. Okay, so speed strength based movement, impulse training, single leg squat, and then we're going to do something with a reflexive exercise. So like a drop dumbbell into a snatch. I think that's where you're going to see bigger gains. People that we train that are a little bit slower, we like to use traditional contrast work. So like, let's say a double front squat that's unbroken. The rest 2 minutes, go do some hurdle hops. I think that's the way I would go. Weed and muscle growth, that's going to be dependent upon what you're eating and the extent of how often you're using. I would love to do videos on Norwegian running. I've even talked about getting like the lactate measurement tool so I could measure my own blood lactate. That's something I do have some interest in. If you guys look at the Peak Strength channel too, we do a little bit more nitty gritty in-depth stuff over there. That's where we're going to be releasing our marathon video as well. Online shows that no athletes really use plyometrics to become good at what they do. What is your take on that? I have no idea where you're seeing that online. No idea. No athletes use plyometrics to become really good at what they do. And I'm having like Rafael Nadal images of him doing plyometrics and being one of the best tennis players of all time. Like, I have no idea where you got that from. Dane has a whole video on that. Yes. Oh yeah, I might even have 2 videos on weed and muscle growth. Which not a lot of guys that are in the strength world talk about it. Yeah. All right. Edvard. French contrast method. Overrated. You should do a video on Kareem. Yeah. Okay. You guys, happy Thanksgiving. I'm going to head out of here. I got to actually go up to a wrestling match, meet some of the guys at South Dakota State. Until next time, everybody have a happy Thanksgiving. Always make sure that you cultivate your power. Peace.